Imagine you're a medieval knight, bleeding out on a muddy battlefield. No hospitals, no antibiotics, just you, your wound, and certain death from infection creeping closer by the second. What if I told you that a sticky substance from a simple tree could save your life right there in the dirt? Or picture this, you're on a Viking ship, waves crashing over the bow, and the only thing between you and a watery grave is a black goo that peasants extracted from burning wood. Sounds impossible, right? Here's the shocking truth. Medieval people weren't the helpless, primitive survivors we imagine. They had discovered two natural substances so powerful, so versatile, that they literally built entire civilizations on them. One came from trees, the other from sheep. Together, they created waterproof armor, healed fatal wounds, assembled deadly weapons, and kept entire armies dry in storms that would destroy modern gear. And we've almost completely forgotten how to use them. Stay with me, because what you're about to discover will change how you think about survival forever. Let's get real for a moment. The Middle Ages were absolutely brutal. We're talking about an era where a tiny scratch could kill you within days, where ships regularly vanished beneath the waves because wooden planks couldn't hold back the ocean's fury, where soldiers froze to death in their own tents because wet clothes meant hypothermia, and hypothermia meant death. Think about that for a second. No Gore-Tex, no antibiotics, no industrial sealants, just raw survival instinct and whatever nature provided. Medieval people faced three massive problems that could end their lives at any moment: infected wounds, water invasion, and the complete breakdown of their tools and weapons. Any one of these could mean game over. But here's where it gets interesting. Through centuries of desperate trial and error, through watching people die from infections and ships sink beneath the waves, they discovered something extraordinary. Two substances that nature had been providing all along, hiding in plain sight: pine resin, oozing golden and sticky from wounded trees, and lanolin, coating every strand of sheep's wool with waterproof protection. These weren't just useful materials. They were survival technologies so advanced that modern science is still validating their effectiveness today. Scientists have confirmed that medieval pine resin can kill antibiotic-resistant superbugs like MRSA. Let that sink in for a moment. Bacteria that laugh at modern antibiotics are destroyed by a substance medieval peasants pulled straight from trees. But how did they extract it? How did they process it? And why did lanolin become such a closely guarded secret that entire kingdoms depended on it? Keep watching, because the extraction methods are absolutely fascinating. Picture a pine tree wounded by a storm. Within hours, thick golden resin starts flowing from the gash, creating a protective seal. The tree is literally healing itself, using a substance that's naturally antiseptic, antibacterial, and anti-inflammatory. Medieval healers watched this happen and had a brilliant realization. If it heals trees, maybe it can heal humans. They were right. But it gets even better than you think. Fresh pine resin applied directly to a battlefield wound would stop bleeding instantly, creating a barrier that kept dirt and infection out. In an era where more soldiers died from infected wounds than from actual combat, this was revolutionary. A soldier who would have died screaming in agony 3 days later from gangrene could now survive and fight again. But medieval people didn't stop there. They weren't satisfied with just slapping raw resin on wounds. They experimented, mixed, and refined until they created something even more powerful. Healers would gently heat the resin and blend it with animal fats or beeswax, creating a stable, spreadable medicine that could be stored and transported. This pine salve became the medieval equivalent of a complete first aid kit, used for battlefield trauma, severe burns, skin diseases, even drawing out splinters and infections. The versatility was mind-blowing. Records from medieval hospitals show healers treating everything from sword wounds to plague sores with pine-based medicines. And here's the crazy part. They had no idea about bacteria or cellular biology. They just knew it worked through pure observation and desperate necessity. Now, you're probably wondering, if pine resin was this powerful for medicine, what else could they do with it? The answer involves ships, survival, and one of the most labor-intensive extraction processes you've ever heard of. But first, let me show you something that'll blow your mind. Let's talk about why the British Navy became obsessed with securing pine forests across Europe, why Viking longships could survive journeys across the North Atlantic when other vessels sank. The answer is pine tar, and the process for making it was absolutely insane. Imagine this. Specialized workers called tar burners would spend weeks collecting resin-rich pine wood. They'd construct massive kilns or dig clay-lined pits in the ground. Then, they'd stack the wood carefully, cover it to restrict oxygen flow, and light it on fire. But not a normal fire. This was a slow, controlled burn that lasted for days, breaking down the wood and forcing it to release thick, black liquid gold, pine tar. The smell was overwhelming. Every shipyard in medieval Europe reeked of pine tar, that sharp, acrid scent that meant the difference between sailing home and drowning at sea. Shipwrights would heat this tar until it was bubbling hot, then soak hemp fibers in it and hammer the mixture into every single gap between hull planks. This process, called caulking, created flexible, watertight seals that could withstand the ocean's constant assault. Then came the really impressive part. They'd coat entire ship hulls in layers of hot pitch, the thicker, more solid version of pine tar. This created black armor that protected against saltwater corrosion, prevented rot, and even killed the shipworms that could devour a hull from the inside out. Naval records prove that properly pitched ships could last for decades in conditions that would destroy modern vessels in years. But the genius of pine resin extended far beyond ships. Soldiers on long campaigns needed their boots waterproofed, or they'd develop trench foot and lose their ability to march. Farmers needed their canvas equipment protected, or they'd lose entire harvests to rain damage. Everyday survival in medieval Europe depended on pine tar and pitch for staying dry. And we haven't even gotten to the most incredible use yet. What medieval people did with pine resin for weapons and tools will absolutely shock you. Here's something most people never consider. In the medieval world, a broken tool wasn't just inconvenient, it was potentially fatal. Your axe handle splits while you're gathering firewood in winter? You might freeze to death before you can make a new one. Your arrowheads come loose during battle? You're now defenseless against enemies who want you dead. Medieval craftsmen solved this with one of the most ingenious adhesives ever created, pitch glue. The process was deceptively simple, but devastatingly effective. They'd melt pine resin, mix in powdered charcoal to dramatically increase its strength, and sometimes add crushed shell or bone for extra reinforcement. The result was a thermoplastic adhesive that could handle tremendous impact and stress. The most critical application was hafting, attaching arrowheads to shafts. Think about the physics involved. An arrow leaves a bow at over 150 feet per second, flies through the air, then slams into a target with enough force to penetrate armor or flesh. The adhesive holding that arrowhead must withstand all of that without failing. Pine pitch glue could do it reliably, every single time. Craftsmen would heat the pitch glue until it became liquid, apply it to both the arrow shaft and the metal head, then bind everything together with sinew or cord. As it cooled, it formed a rock-solid bond that could survive dozens of shots. The same technique worked for axe heads, knife handles, spear points, every critical tool and weapon that medieval survival depended on. But it was also their universal repair kit. A cracked cooking pot? Seal it with pitch glue. Broken farming equipment? Pitch glue. Damaged leather goods? You guessed it. They even formed the processed resin into portable pitch sticks that could be carried on journeys. Hold the end over a flame, melt a few drops, and you had instant field repair capability. Anywhere, anytime. This wasn't just clever, this was survival engineering at its absolute finest. But as amazing as pine resin was, medieval people discovered something even more extraordinary. A second natural substance that didn't just seal things from the outside, it actually transformed materials at a molecular level, making them repel water like magic. Every day across medieval Europe, shepherds noticed something strange. After handling freshly sheared sheep, their hands never got wet, even in pouring rain. Their clothes gradually became water-resistant over months of working with wool. Water would literally bead up and roll off fabric that used to soak through instantly. This wasn't coincidence. This was millions of years of biological engineering that sheep had perfected for survival. The substance was lanolin, a complex waxy grease secreted from glands connected to every wool fiber. Sheep evolved this as waterproof armor that allows them to graze comfortably during storms that would kill unprotected animals within hours. Here's what makes lanolin absolutely revolutionary. Unlike pine tar that creates external barriers, lanolin actually penetrates and transforms materials from within. It changes the fundamental properties of fabric, making fibers repel water at the molecular level. Medieval families who discovered this possessed weatherproof technology that entire civilizations would come to depend on. Different sheep breeds produce wildly varying amounts of lanolin. Fine wool breeds like merino contain up to 30% lanolin by weight. That means a single fleece could yield 250 to 300 milliliters of pure extract.